Well, a very warm welcome to our tea and training. Although I do have a confession to make this afternoon. I was in need of some coffee, so I'm on coffee and training. I hope that's all right for the for a change today. Um, we are going exploring the fabulous Stonehenge. I know it's one of our American clients' favorite destinations, and I'm sure you'll have probably been there already. So I'm going to happily introduce David Hutchison, who has brought Stonehenge and the surrounding area alive with fabulous stories for so many of our clients. And the feedback we get about David's stories and so on is absolutely fantastic. So he will be helping us along the way. So let me just do a quick swap of the screen. So David will talk to you a little bit more about the access and so on to Stonehenge. It's not always exactly as we would want it, but we can certainly arrange some fabulous opportunities for your clients. And in terms of sitting within an itinerary, Stonehenge is fabulous actually, because a bit like Highclere and so on, it's so beautifully positioned. Obviously, west of London, excuse me, about an hour and a half west of London, and so from there you've got easy access going down south to the New Forest and so on, heading sort of north and west into the Cotswolds, up down to Bath, and then up into the Cotswolds, and obviously down into Devon and Cornwall and so on. And there are some wonderful hotels for your guests. I think we mentioned the Newt on Friday. There's Heckfield Place, the Four Seasons in Hampshire, and so on. So, as David will talk about, we really do recommend that your clients, if we possibly can, stay a little bit closer to Stonehenge, because it is a bit of a schlep from London, but it can be done. It can be done. It's just we recommend other words. So I think you're going to love this, because David is just about to take you to Stonehenge and beyond. There is so much more to see. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I hope that you're going to learn a little bit more than you've known before. So over to you, David.
Okay, my name's David, and many years ago I studied archaeology at Cambridge University, and for the last nearly 10 years I've been a tour guide. I live about 6 miles from Stonehenge, so it is my bread and butter. So then, next slide please. There is really two types of tour to Stonehenge, the first of which we call special access tours, and that enables you to get inside the stone circle. You can't touch the stones, but you can get inside the stone circle, and that groups of about 30 a day. And that's open only before and after normal opening hours. So typically in the summer, there might be a 6 o'clock, a 7 o'clock and an 8 o'clock special access for 30 people at a time. And then in the evening after Stonehenge closes at about 6 o'clock, there might be a couple of other later tours for an hour each. And they are self-guided, or you would need a guide to go around. Then the standard tour is at all other times during working hours, and they do slightly change. In the winter it doesn't open until 10. In the height of the summer it's 9 o'clock, and other times it can be 9:30. And the standard tour gets you onto a bus down to Stonehenge from the visitor centre, and then you get within 20 yards of the stones themselves. And the good thing is there's nobody wandering around in the middle of the stones, so your photographs are just of the stones themselves, and you go on a circular tour around the edge. There is a third type of tour, but that's just for President Obama when he came. You land in a helicopter and everybody else magically disappears and you do what you want. But We don't offer those much. So, yeah, next slide. Yeah, it does take, as I say, 2 hours to visit Stonehenge. You can't really rush it. Why? Because you get there, you've got to exchange the tickets for the sort of tickets you get in advance at the visitor centre. You then get on a bus and drive down to the stones. It takes at least 40 minutes to walk around the stones and have a look if you've got a guide explaining what's going on. Then there is a little visitor centre to look at as well, an excellent reproduction of some huts, Stone Age huts, which they've excavated nearby, and they've done reconstruction. So you can get a bit more of a feeling for how these guys lived. And there's also an indoor exhibition area with a whole lot of flint tools and bronze tools and burials from that period. So you get a good flavour, more than just the stones, from the visitor centre. So that's 2 hours. Now, where is Stonehenge? It's in Wiltshire near Salisbury, and it's really 2 hours drive from London. It's only 90 miles, but although this is a very small country, you'd think it'd be much easier to get around, but the roads are tight. Getting out of London or into London is a challenge. And so you need to allow 2 hours drive to get there. And therefore, it's quite a long day. If you're going to drive down from London and drive back to London, that's 4 hours in the car, which is a test, a bit of a, it's possible, but you certainly wouldn't want to be leaving London at sort of 4 o'clock in the morning necessarily for a sunrise tour. I've done it. I've picked people up at most crazy hours in London and driven them down. But if I were wanting a holiday, it wouldn't include a 4 o'clock start. But everything's possible. And the great thing about Stonehenge, it's very close to its sister site that we'll cover in a moment, called AVEBURY, which is another prehistoric Stone Age site, an hour away. It's 20 minutes from Salisbury Cathedral, and a lot of people enjoy Salisbury Cathedral. It has the tallest spire in the country. It's an hour from Bath, and again, there are some good hotels. I think you probably covered in another presentation on Bath. In Bath, and so it's very easy. If they're spending a couple of nights in Bath, Stonehenge is an easy option to whiz out and visit and back again. Within a couple of hours, you've got the Cotswolds, the most charming set of hills with beautiful stone villages. The whole thing looks like a film set, but people actually do live inside those little cottages. It's not far from Oxford or Bristol, and it's en route. If you're in London and heading for Devon and Cornwall, then Stonehenge makes a very good stop en route. Next slide. Next slide.
Yeah, apologies. I don't know why it's
stuck. Never mind. What have we got?
Sorry.
Okay.
There we go.
So Stonehenge and AVEBURY are both part of the World Heritage Site. They're both protected. This you see now as a special access tour, up to 30 people, and they're actually allowed inside the stones. And you get a feeling for the scale of the stones there. The stones behind them, the standing stones behind them, would weigh up to 40 tons. So that's quite an achievement to move those stones around the place. The other thing about Stonehenge is it's old. It was first used as a sort of prehistoric ceremonial centre, 3000 BC, 5,000 years ago. That's its first selling point. It's old, older than the pyramids, older than all the other places, Machu Picchu or the islands of the Pacific, or just about every other ancient monument. The big stones that you see there, the enormous ones, they came in 500 years later at 2500 BC, which is around the time they were building the pyramids. Stonehenge itself was in use for 1,000 years after that. And then in about 1500 BC, it fell out of use. Belief system had changed and they no longer came. So I mentioned the large stones there, but you'll see also next to some people is the one or two smaller stones, which are sort of man-sized stones. So I'll cover them on the next slide. So the large stones, we call them sarsens, which is shorthand for silicified sandstone. They're a sandstone, and sandstone's normally fairly friable. It's not particularly hard stone, but this has been silicified. In other words, been under enormous heat and weight pressure at some stage of its geology, and it's very, very hard. It's as hard as granite. As I say, they weigh up to 40 tons, those big stones that we're looking at there. And it would have taken something like 100 people to pull them the 20 miles from where they came from. And they came from very close to AVEBURY, which we'll be looking at in a minute. And so the first thing about Stonehenge, it's not just the engineering challenge of getting those stones, putting them up, but it's getting them there in the first place and the logistics of that. You've got 100 people. It would have taken 12 days to pull the stones using logs as rollers, like the ancient Egyptians did. But those 100 people are going to be very hungry at the end of the day. You've got to have 12 feeding points along route. You've got to have people preparing the stones at the start. You've got to have people cutting down all the logs, preparing the ropes. And it's a huge organizational challenge for people who can't read or write. And then the smaller stones, which I said are about man size, they're called blue stones, although everything's grey today. But if you take a hammer and have a swipe at them, not that I would encourage you to do so, but if you did, you would find that there's sort of greenish, bluish tinge to them. They're called blue stones. But they've come from southwest Wales, over 100 miles away, which is an awful long way to drag a stone. So there had to be something very special or magical about those stones. And there are reasons as to why they moved them that far. The thing about Stonehenge is we have a number of stone circles in the country and elsewhere, one or two in France and places. But the unique selling point of Stonehenge is that the stones are shaped. If you look at the stones now that are facing us, they're tapered towards the top. They're not rectangular, they're trapezoidal. In other words, they get smaller at the top, like the columns on a Greek or Roman temple. And it's deliberately done. It's a trick of the eye to make it look as if they're taller than they are. So they've been shaped, and there are no other shaped prehistoric stones in the area, certainly in this country. And then they have these lintel stones, the flat stones, all the way around the edge at the top. And that, again, is something you don't see in other stone circles. So there's the three unique selling points of Stonehenge. It's very old. They've shaped the stones by hand with other stones, no metal tools in the Stone Age, and they put the lintel stones up on top. And I can explain if you had more time how they did that. Next slide. So here's an aerial shot of Stonehenge, and you can see it is circular. It's a series of concentric circles. The outer level very obvious, and then inside that is a circle of the smaller stones, but it's incomplete. Why is it incomplete? Because archaeology and tourism and conservation is about 200 years old, and these stones have been sitting there for 4,500 years, and I'm sorry to say that for 4,300 years people have been saying to themselves, I need to build a house. Now, am I going to go and drag stone from a quarry 20 miles away, or am I going to go and take this rather, this nearby stone at Stonehenge? And I'm afraid they've taken the easy option, and stones have walked and been broken up. And you can see some of the shapes there are not the shapes that they would have been. They're sort of halfway to being exported. The other thing about that slide is that it points. I don't know if you can see that the largest flattened stone in the middle, just about in the middle, and it's pointing towards the 4 standing stones with the 3 lintels in the sort of top left or 3/4 of the way up on the left of your picture. And there's a line going sort of through that and very faintly heading off to the sort of top left-hand corner of the screen. That is the solstice line. That is the line that the sun shines through on midsummer or the summer solstice, which is 23rd of June, and going the other way, the sun set just before Christmas on about the 23rd of December. And the one inescapable fact about Stonehenge, when it comes to why did they build it, is they've orientated it on the summer and winter solstice, on the solstice line. Why? That's another story and will require more time to explain. Next slide. Now, just a mile away from Amesbury, from Stonehenge, is the site where we think the builders of Stonehenge were living. That's it. Stay there, please. And they also had a handy little temple, an arrangement of circular pillars, but these were wooden, not stone. And it was a mystery for a long time as to why we have a wooden Stonehenge, or Woodhenge as we call it, only a mile away from Stonehenge. And nearby Woodhenge are the remains of huts. There's nothing above ground level, so don't get too excited, but archaeologists have found the remains of huts where we think the builders of Stonehenge were living. And this completes the picture of who built Stonehenge. And it's only recently that we've come up with an explanation for why there's a wooden version of Stonehenge, which dates to about 2300 BC, just a mile away from Stonehenge. Woodhenge was only discovered in 1922 from the air, funnily enough, because in summer evenings, you can see the shadows that are shining on those concrete pillars, which mark the spot where we think the wooden posts were. You see those long evening shadows. That magnifies relief in the ground, and the little dips where the posts had been showed up from the air. As I say, it was a mystery as to why there's a wooden version of Stonehenge, and the latest theory is that they built in wood for the living. So this was the sort of Sunday worship, if you like, the regular meeting house religious place. But you build in stone for the ancestors, because the ancestors, the spirits, are always with you, whereas we, the living, are ephemeral, here today, gone tomorrow, and therefore wood is appropriate. That's the latest theory, and there's been a lot of archaeology testing that theory, and it comes out quite well. There are other theories, of course, as to why Stonehenge was built. Moving on. Only 20 miles away, which on the English roads and their lanes between Stonehenge and Avebury, it's nearly an hour to get there. But there is a sister site for Stonehenge, which is similar, but different. And it's got a village in the middle of it. It's a very quirky place, and compared with Stonehenge, which gets very crowded come 11 o'clock, a lot of visitors coming, gets 1.5 million visitors a year. But Avebury would only get several 100,000, and so it's rather more relaxed. There isn't an entrance fee, for example. And you can see the scale of it is very different. There is a little ditch around Stonehenge, very, very small one, but there's a monster ditch around Avebury, and the area it covers is 14 times bigger than Stonehenge. It's built of the same stones from the same location, the same material stones, but they're not shaped. But they're huge, some of them. They weigh up to 100 tons. As I say, the site is much bigger. There is an outer, next to the ditch, that you can see very clearly marked on the way around, on a circle, which is more or less circular, not a perfect circle. Then there's an inner, a sort of outer line of stones that you can see running around by the edge of the ditch. And then inside, there are two inner circles, which don't show up so well. And indeed, a lot of the stone from Avebury has been taken to build the houses that you can see in the middle. So it's incomplete, more of a challenge archaeologically. But there are these two sort of temples in the middle, and then inside the sort of inner circle are these two temples. What their meaning is, and I think there are a couple of explanations, but neither of them is completely flawless and foolproof. So we don't really know, but there are a couple of quite good theories as to what it was about. But it's different from Stonehenge. It's not orientated on the solstice at all. But it's a very charming place, and if you're interested in prehistory, then it makes a very good day along with Stonehenge. Next slide. But there's a close-up of the Avebury stone, the stones around the edge of the Avebury henge, as we call it. What isn't so obvious is the height of those stones. They're about 12 foot high. I come just about halfway up, those stones. They're big. So that's Avebury, but there's more than just the stone circles at Avebury, because there's 3 other sites very close by. My favourite is this one, the West Kennet Long Barrow, and you see the entrance to it here. What you don't see in the picture is the mound, which is the prehistoric burial mound, where nearly 40 people, complete skeletons, were placed inside before Avebury itself was built and before Stonehenge was built. This goes back to 3400 BC. But what is fun about that is you walk inside the tomb. You crouch down, it's got stones propping it up all the way around, and you are literally walking into prehistory. You're walking into 3000 BC. It's a little bit eerie, but there's often somebody who's left some incense or something nice and smelly inside, and it gives you a feeling of the deep, deep past. We haven't got a photograph of Silbury Hill, which is the highest man-made mound in northwestern Europe. It's 40 meters high, so a bit over 40 yards high. And why they built it, we have no idea. It's not like the pyramids. There's nobody buried underneath. There have been several archaeological digs which are looking for something in the middle to be buried. It isn't. It's not the pyramids. What they were thinking of when they built that mound, we don't. And there's another site called the Sanctuary, which is very like Woodhenge, and it's again, it's only a mile from the Long Barrow there, and it's a certain arrangement of circular stones and indeed wooden posts, which is the start of a long stone ceremonial avenue leading to Avebury itself. So there are these 4 interconnected sites at Avebury, which take quite a while to investigate. You certainly need about 2.5 hours to gallop around them all. And if you were a very interested archaeologist, you'd take longer. The Long Barrow here, that's pictured, is about 10 minutes walk off the road. So up a little hill, not a very steep hill, but for folks who aren't used to walking, taking exercise, and it might be a challenge too far, whereas the others you can drive up to. Next slide. So trying to make this into a sort of day, as I say, you need 2 hours minimum at Stonehenge, and you might well consider staying closer than London to make the day not too long. And certainly, if you're doing a special access tour in the morning, early morning, I'd advise you to be more local overnight. Then you need to drive to see some of the other sites, and Woodhenge is very close by, but it would be a while to drive, back an hour to drive to Avebury. You would want lunch along the way, and there are some lovely pubs. There's one I particularly liked near Avebury, which serves extremely good food. And then you wanted to get to Avebury itself, and it gives a minimum of 2 hours at Avebury, a little bit longer if you want to get to the West Kennet Long Barrow. There is a nice little tea shop at Avebury, serving very good teas of one sort or another, especially chocolate brownies, and it makes a thoroughly good day. And I think that's probably it from me.
Fantastic. Thanks, David. I think what you've just said is what our clients say, that they've had a thoroughly good day. The chocolate brownies have certainly been mentioned, and also I've got to give another plug for this, the pub that you take them to, because they all just love it. On a summer's day, sitting outside, on a winter's day, being nicely cozy and warm inside. It's a real treat in the middle of the day. So yes, that is a bit more about Stonehenge. If you've visited Stonehenge, hopefully you've learnt a little bit more, or just remembered things that you might have forgotten. So while we have our resident expert, have you got any questions that you would like to ask?
I'm curious if the crowds on the days of the solstice are probably more intense. Is it possible to get access on those days? And if so, is there a requirement to put in a reservation sooner? What are the options there?
The solstice itself is a free-for-all. And to be honest, I don't really recommend it. If it's going to be a sunny morning, there will be up to 30,000 people there. It's the one day that English Heritage, who run the site, just sort of give up. And it's a free-for-all, basically. So you need to go there overnight and then sort of try and jostle your way into getting the perfect picture of the sun rising through the right stones in the morning. But there will be 30,000 other people also trying to get that picture. So I don't think it's a very, it's for the sort of clients that, or the typical clients that you guys have, I wouldn't really recommend it. It's really for young people who don't mind camping out for a night, and it's a sort of pop concert type experience. If you're interested in the archaeology and want time and space to explore that, I wouldn't recommend that day. The facilities are closed, the visitor centre is closed, and English Heritage just sort of rather give up. Margaret Thatcher tried to stop people going to Stonehenge on that day, and so because they were climbing on the stones and causing damage, and she said, no, you know, the Wiltshire police must stop people going in. There was only about 3 policemen in Wiltshire, and when 30,000 people turned up, and just people power takes over. So as a sort of an experience of people power, it's interesting, but as a tourist experience, I would suggest that that's not the day to go. I think I can't remember, the first slide said it's open 362 or 3 days a year. It's not open on Christmas Day, and it's not open for proper visiting on the summer solstice.
Thank you.
Good. Are there any other questions? Nothing in chat, Lisa, no? Nope. Okay. I think you have answered everything, David. So thank you very much for that. And just to, I am going to repeat myself, but our clients love spending their time with David, because he obviously knows a lot, but is so very passionate about it all too, which just shines through and is great. So thank you very much for joining us again, and we've got another couple of treats for you coming up this week. And actually continuing on from the stone circles of Stonehenge, on Wednesday we are visiting Stoner Park, which is a beautiful stately home and set in beautiful grounds about 5 miles from Henley. And there is, albeit a very small one, but there is a stone circle set just in front of the house, and there is an historical link which we may well share with you. But not only are we visiting Stoner, but William Stoner, who is the current Lord of the Manor, is joining us, and he is a fabulous chap. His family have lived in Stoner Park for 850 years, which is quite extraordinary. And he's got all of the stories to share. He's very, very proud of their links with their American cousins. One of his ancestors married one of a wealthy American heiress, and the family ties are still very close. So he will share that and talk a little bit about the amazing history of his family. And then on Friday, we are exploring the incredible options for eating and drinking in this area. Everything from foraging to fine dining. So we're doing it all on Friday, which will be fabulous, and hopefully make us all very hungry. So a huge thank you, and we look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.